The small escape pod floated alone in the cold, dark space. Its lights blinked weakly. Inside, the air was thin, and the temperature dropped more each hour. Leora sat close to her daughter Nyla, holding her tight to keep her warm. Leora's skin was a soft gray-blue with small patterns that glowed faintly when she was afraid. Right now, her body was dim. She tried to stay calm, but her heart beat fast. Nyla, only 6 years old, rested her head on Leora's chest. The girl was tired and hungry, but she did not cry. She trusted her mother. "Mama, are we going to be okay?" Nyla asked in a soft voice. Leora kissed the top of her head. "Yes, my star. Someone will find us. We just have to wait." But Leora did not know if that was true. Their ship had been attacked without warning. The attackers were once their own people, now turned against them. Leora had worked as a scientist, not a soldier. She had no weapons, no allies. In the panic, she grabbed Nyla and ran to the escape pod. Now, they were far from any known planet, in a place where few ships traveled. She looked at the control screen. The power was low. The signal beacon blinked, sending a distress call again and again. It was all they had. Hours passed. The lights grew dimmer. Leora gave Nyla the last sip of clean water and stroked her daughter's hair as she drifted to sleep. Leora stayed awake, watching the screen, praying to stars she did not believe in. Her eyes burned, but she didn't close them. Then something changed. A small light appeared on the screen. At first, Leora thought it was a system glitch. But it moved. It grew brighter. A ship dot. She leaned forward, heart pounding. Her fingers flew across the controls, trying to boost the signal. The pod shook slightly as a larger ship came near. A soft hum filled the air. Someone was docking with them. Nyla woke up. "Mama, what's happening?" Leora smiled through her tears. "I think help is here." A hiss of air sounded as the door unlocked. Light flooded the small pod. A figure stood in the doorway. He was tall, wearing a simple spacesuit with a helmet. When he removed the helmet, Leora saw his face, a human male. He looked surprised but calm. "Hello," he said, stepping in slowly. "I'm not here to hurt you. My name is Jackson." "Can you understand me?" Leora hesitated. She had learned a little Earth Common before. She nodded double quotes yes. We need help." "My. Daughther, she's cold." Jackson moved closer, careful not to scare them. He looked at Nyla and gave her a small smile. "Let's get you both out of here. My ship is safe." Leora nodded again, weak with relief. Jackson lifted Nyla gently in his arms. The girl was too tired to speak, but she didn't resist. Leora followed them into his ship. It was small but clean, with working lights and warmth. She sighed as the door closed behind her. Jackson set Nyla down on a soft seat and handed Leora a thermal blanket. "Wrap her up. There's food and water, too." "I'll bring it." Leora wrapped the blanket around Nyla, who curled up and closed her eyes. Jackson returned with a warm drink and some protein bars. Leora took them, her hand shaking. "Thank you," she said. "No problem," Jackson replied. "You were lucky I was close enough to hear your signal. Most ships avoid this part of space." "We had no choice," Leora said. "Our home turned against us." Jackson didn't ask for more. He saw the sadness in her eyes and didn't push. He just nodded and sat nearby, giving them space. For the first time in days, Leora let her body relax. She watched Nyla sleep, safe and warm. The human had saved them. She didn't know why he had stopped to help strangers, but she was thankful. In that moment, she believed her daughter might still have a future. And Jackson, sitting quietly with his tired eyes and calm voice, seemed like someone she could trust. Maybe, just maybe, they had found the right person at the right time. Outside, the stars still burned cold and bright. But inside the ship, hope had returned. Jackson watched the mother and child from the other side of the room. Leora held Nyla close, still wrapping her in the thermal blanket. The girl had fallen asleep again. Her breathing was steady now. Jackson was glad they were safe, at least. For now, he got up and went to the cockpit. His ship, the Odyssey Star, was small but strong. It had one cabin, a food station, and enough supplies for one person to live alone for months. Now he had 2 more people on board. He knew he had to make some changes fast. Jackson checked the ship's systems. The fuel was enough to reach the nearest trade station, but it was still a few days away. He sent a short message to the station, letting them know he had survivors on board. It was an open message, but he didn't give their names or any details. He leaned back in his seat. This wasn't part of his plan. He usually carries small cargo between quiet systems. He kept to himself. Helping others wasn't something he did often. But when he heard the signal, something made him stop. Back in the main cabin, Leora opened her eyes. She looked around the room and saw a folded blanket and a bottle of water beside her. She picked it up slowly, her body still sore. She drank a little and looked at Nyla. The girl was still sleeping peacefully. Jackson walked in quietly. Leora turned to face him. "Thank you," she said again. Her voice was soft. "You don't have to thank me," Jackson replied. "Anyone would have done the same." Leora looked down. No, not everyone. He didn't argue. He had seen enough in space to know she was right. People often looked away when others were in trouble. But something in her eyes made him stay this time. "What happened to you?" he asked. Leora was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke. "Our home was safe once. I worked in science. My daughter went to school. But a group in our government took power. They blamed people like me for their problems. One night, they came with weapons. I ran with Nyla. I had no choice." Jackson nodded slowly. "And the escape pod? It was damaged. I think they meant for it to fail," she said. He rubbed the back of his neck. "I'm sorry. I wish I had found you sooner." "You found us in time," Leora said. "That's all that matters." Nyla stirred and opened her eyes. She blinked and looked at Jackson. "Is this your ship?" she asked. Jackson smiled. "Yes, it is." "Welcome aboard?" She sat up and looked around. "It's nice. It's warm." Jackson laughed a little. "I try to keep it that way." Leora stood slowly and held Nyla's hand. "We will not be a burden. As soon as we reach a station, we will find our way." Jackson looked at them both. "You're not a burden. You're guests. Stay as long as you need." The ship hummed softly as it moved through space. Jackson showed them where the food supplies were and set up a small bed for Nyla in the corner. The girl explored the cabin with quiet wonder. Everything was new to her. Later, Leora helped clean the cabin. She was careful and quiet, but Jackson noticed how she checked every door and corner, as if expecting danger. He didn't say anything, but he made sure to keep the ship secure. That night, Jackson sat in the cockpit, looking at the stars. Leora came in and sat near him. For a while, they didn't speak. "Do you travel alone?" she asked. "Most of the time," he said. "It's easier. No one to worry about." "And now?" she asked. He looked at her. "Now I worry." She smiled a little. "I understand. I worry too." All the time, they sat in silence again. Jackson didn't mind. It was a quiet he could live with. As the stars moved outside the window, he felt something different. He didn't know what it was yet, but he knew that meeting Leora and Nyla had changed something in him. He looked at her again. "We'll reach the station in 3 days. Until then, just rest. You and your daughter are safe here." Leora nodded. "Thank you, Jackson. Truly." He gave a small nod. "Get some sleep. I'll keep watch." She left the cockpit quietly. Jackson turned back to the stars. Alone again, but not really. For the first time in a long while, he didn't feel like just a man flying through empty space. He felt like someone who had a purpose. Even if he didn't fully understand it yet, behind him, the ship moved forward. And in the quiet dark of space, a new journey had begun. The days passed slowly as the Odyssey star moved through the dark space. Jackson kept the ship on course, while Leora and Neela settled into a routine. It wasn't easy, but they tried their best. In the mornings, Nyla sat near the front window, watching stars pass by. Jackson gave her a few old books and a tablet with simple games. She liked the pictures and stories, even though they were in a language she barely knew. Sometimes she asked Jackson to read them to her. He always did, smiling as she listened with wide eyes. Leora spent time helping Jackson keep the ship clean and running. She learned how to check systems and manage the food supplies. She didn't talk much at first, but she asked questions and listened carefully. Jackson noticed that she was smart and quick to understand. Her quiet strength impressed him. One evening, while they ate together, Leora asked, "Why do you live out here alone?" Jackson looked at his food for a moment before answering. "I used to be part of a bigger crew. We had a small shipping company. Things went bad. The others left. I stayed. I guess I didn't want to start over." Leora nodded. "It is hard to start over, but sometimes we don't get a choice." He looked at her. "Yeah, life makes the choice for us." Nyla was already asleep, wrapped in her blanket on the side bed. Her soft breathing filled the quiet room. That night, as Jackson sat in the cockpit, something strange happened. A warning light blinked on the screen. It was a proximity alert. Another ship was close. He leaned forward and scanned the area. A small ship followed them, keeping distance. It didn't answer hails. Jackson frowned. It was too quiet. Leora walked in and saw the red light. "Is something wrong?" Jackson kept his voice calm. "There's a ship behind us. It's not talking. Might just be passing through." Leora looked at the screen, and her face turned pale. "That symbol, I know it. Who are they?" "They're mercenaries. They work for the new rulers. They're hunting people like me." Jackson sat back in his chair. "So they followed your signal?" "Maybe. Or they tracked the pod before you found us." He turned off the ship's main lights and dropped speed. "We need to think. They're not close enough to attack, but they're watching us." "What will you do?" Leora asked. "I won't let them take you. That's for sure." Leora touched his arm. "You don't have to risk yourself. Just drop us at the next station." Jackson shook his head. "It's too late for that. We're in this together now." For the rest of the night, Jackson worked on the ship's defense systems. He hadn't used them in a long time, but he made sure they were ready. Leora stayed beside him, helping when she could. The next day, the other ship was still following. It didn't come closer, but it didn't leave either. Jackson changed course, hoping to lose them in a belt of small asteroids ahead. "We'll go quiet," he said. "Hide behind the rocks for a while." The plan worked. The Odyssey star slipped into the thick field of floating rocks and ice. Jackson turned off the main engines and drifted slowly. The other ships stayed outside. The belt dot inside, the air was tense. Leora sat with Nyla, whispering softly to her. Jackson watched the screens, waiting. Hours passed. Then, finally, the other ship moved away. The screen cleared. The threat was gone, at least for now. Jackson leaned back with a deep breath. "Looks like we scared them off." Leora smiled a little. "Or they decided we were too much trouble." "Either way, thank you. We're not safe yet," Jackson said. "But we're closer. One more day, and we'll reach the station." That night, they shared a quiet meal. Nyla sat between Jackson and her mother, talking about the stars. Jackson listened with a small smile. For a moment, things felt normal. After Nyla went to sleep, Leora spoke. "Why did you help us?" "Really?" Jackson was quiet. "I don't know. Maybe I was tired of being alone. Maybe I saw something in your eyes. You and NYLA ... You reminded me of what really matters." Leora looked down. "You gave us more than help. You gave us hope." Jackson looked at her and nodded slowly. Then it was worth it. The ship floated forward, leaving the danger behind. Ahead, a station waited, and with it, the next part of their journey. Ben watched the stars from the window of his ship. He was still thinking about the strange meeting with Mira and her daughter, Lyra. It was only yesterday that he found them on that broken escape pod. Now, they were resting in his small living quarters. He could hear them talking quietly, their voices soft and worried. He understood a little of their language now. Mira was trying to calm Lyra, but the girl was scared. Ben brought them food, careful not to frighten them. Mira accepted the food with a nod, her blue eyes watching every move Ben made. Lyra sat close to her mother, holding her hand tightly. Ben smiled and pointed to the food, then made eating motions. Lyra copied him, slowly tasting the strange meal. It was nothing like the food she was used to, but she was too hungry to care. Myra thanked Ben in her language. Ben did not understand all the words, but he knew what she meant. That day, Ben checked the escape pod again. He wanted to know what had happened. He found signs of damage from weapons. There were burns on the metal and wires cut in strange ways. He guessed someone had attacked the pod on purpose. He looked through the records and found part of a message. It was in the alien language, but a few words matched the ones Mira had tried to say. Ben realized Mira and Lyra had been left to die in space. Someone wanted them gone. When Ben returned to the living area, Mira was waiting for him. She tried to explain what happened, using her hands and a few words Ben had learned. She pointed to herself, then to Lyra, and made a pushing motion, like someone forcing them away. She then made a motion with her hands to show something breaking apart, and then floating. Ben understood. Myra and Lyra were forced into the escape pod. They did not want to leave their home, but someone made them. Ben wanted to help, but he did not know how. Later, Ben showed them around his ship. He explained things in slow English. Myra listened closely, repeating words and trying to learn. Lyra was curious and touched everything, sometimes laughing when Ben made silly faces. For the first time, Lyra smiled at Ben. Mira saw this and her face softened. She trusted Ben a little more. Ben checked the star charts. He wanted to find a safe place for Myra and Lyra. He knew there were many dangers in space. Some people would not be kind to aliens. Ben worried about bringing them to a human station. He thought about his old friend Carla, who lived on a small outpost not far away. Carla was kind and knew how to help people. Ben decided to set course for the outpost. He told Myra, showing her a map on his screen. Myra nodded, trusting Ben's choice. The trip to the outpost took 2 days. During this time, Ben and Mira learned more words from each other. They used drawings and simple objects to explain things. Ben showed Mira how to use the ship's bathroom and how to open the doors. Lyra liked the small window in her room where she could see stars rushing past. Sometimes Ben found her there, pressed close to the glass dot at night. Ben heard Lyra crying. He knocked on the door and asked if everything was okay. Myra opened the door, her face worried. Ben knelt down to talk to Lyra. He gave her a soft blanket and a small toy, a plastic star he kept for good luck. Lyra held the toy and stopped crying. Myra touched Ben's arm, a quiet thank you in her eyes. The next morning, Ben cooked breakfast. He tried to make something that looked more like the food Mira and Lyra liked. He used simple grains and some dried fruit. Myra tasted it and smiled. Lyra ate quickly, hungry again. After breakfast, Ben asked if Mira wanted to learn more English. She nodded. Ben found an old tablet and showed her pictures with words. Myra repeated the words carefully. Lyra tried too, making Ben laugh when she said the words in a funny voice dot as they neared the outpost. Ben worried about what would happen next. Would Carla be able to help? Would the people at the outpost accept Myra and Lyra? Ben did not know, but he wanted to try. He checked his supplies and made sure everything was ready. Myra and Lyra watched him, trusting him to keep them safe. When the outpost finally appeared on the screen, Lyra clapped her hands in excitement. Ben smiled and told them they would be safe soon. Mira squeezed his hand. Ben felt something change inside him. He did not know what would happen next, but he was not afraid. He would protect them, no matter what. Ben slowed his ship as the outpost came into view. The lights of the small space station blinked softly in the blackness of space. He spoke gently to Mira and Lyra, telling them they were almost there. Lyra looked out the window, her face full of wonder. Mira held her close, whispering words of comfort in her own language. As Ben prepared to dock, he felt a little nervous. He hoped his friend Carla was still in charge. He also hoped the outpost was safe for Mira and Lyra. Ben checked the radio and called for permission to land. The voice on the other end was friendly. Ben was told to come in. He landed the ship slowly, careful not to scare his guests. Once the ship was still, Ben helped Mira and Lyra get ready. Mira wore a simple dress she found among Ben's old clothes. Lyra clutched her small toy star. Ben looked at them and tried to smile, even though he was worried. They walked down the ramp together. The air inside the outpost was cool and smelled of metal and old machines. A few people stared as Ben walked with the alien mother and daughter. Ben kept his head high. He saw Carla waiting near the door. Carla smiled when she saw Ben. She was a tall woman with brown hair and kind eyes. She hugged Ben and then looked at Myra and Lyra. Ben explained the story in simple words. He told Carla how he found them and how they were left alone in space. Carla listened and nodded. Carla knelt down to talk to Lyra. She smiled and showed her a small candy. Lyra looked at Mira, who nodded and then took the candy. She smiled shyly. Carla turned to Myra and spoke softly, telling her she was safe now. Myra's eyes filled with tears of relief. Carla led them to a quiet room at the back of the outpost. It was small, but it was clean and warm. There was a bed and a little table, and a window looking out into space. Carla told them to rest and that she would bring food soon. Myra and Lyra sat on the bed, looking around with wide eyes. Ben and Carla stepped outside to talk. Ben told her everything he knew. Carla frowned when she heard that someone tried to kill Myra and Lyra. She promised to keep them safe. She said the outpost was quiet and most people here were friendly. Ben thanked her. He felt a little better now. That evening, Carla brought a meal for Myra and Lyra. It was simple food, but warm and filling. Lyra ate quickly, then fell asleep on the bed. Myra stayed awake, her eyes never leaving her daughter. Ben sat with Myra for a while, trying to make her feel safe. He pointed to himself and said, Ben. Myra smiled and said her own name, Mira. She pointed to her sleeping daughter and said, Lyra. They sat in silence, watching the stars outside the window. Ben wanted to help more, but he did not know what to do. He asked Carla if she could try to learn more about Myra's home. Carla said she would ask some people she knew. She promised to find out if anyone was looking for Mira and Lyra, or if there was a safe place they could go. Over the next days, life at the outpost settled into a quiet routine. Ben visited every day. He brought small gifts for Lyra, like paper, to draw on and colored pencils. Lyra made pictures of her old home, of stars and strange trees. She gave some drawings to Ben, who put them up in his ship. Mira and Carla spent time together, learning each other's words. Myra tried hard to speak English. She wanted to understand what was happening. Carla helped her, using pictures and objects to teach her new words. Sometimes other people from the outpost visited. Some were curious, but most were kind. One night, Myra asked Ben why he helped them. Ben thought for a long time. He said he could not leave anyone alone in space. He said everyone needs help sometimes. Myra listened, her eyes shining with tears. She thanked Ben. She said he was a good man, but things were not perfect. One day, two strangers came to the outpost. They wore dark clothes and spoke in low voices. Carla saw them first. She watched as they looked around and asked questions. She warned Ben that these men might be looking for Myra and Lyra. Ben felt a cold fear. He told Carla to keep Myra and Lyra hidden. That night, Ben visited Myra and Lyra again. He told them to stay in their room and not open the door for anyone but Carla or him. Myra nodded, fear in her eyes. Lyra held her mother's hand tightly. Ben promised to protect them. He said he would not let anything bad happen. The next day, Ben and Carla tried to find out who the strangers were. Ben followed them quietly. He listened as they talked in a strange language. He only understood a few words, but he heard them say search and reward. Ben knew they were looking for Myra and Lyra. He returned to Myra's room and told her what he heard. Myra looked scared, but she was not alone anymore. Ben held her hand and promised to keep her and Lyra safe, no matter what. The next day started quietly on the outpost. Ben woke up early and checked his messages. There was nothing new, but he still felt uneasy. He could not stop thinking about the two strangers. Ben quickly dressed and hurried to see Carla. He wanted to make sure Myra and Lyra were safe. Carla was waiting for him in the dining room. She told Ben that the two men were still on the outpost. They had not left during the night. Carla said she saw them talking with some workers, asking questions. Ben grew more worried. He thanked Carla and hurried down the long hallway to the room where Myra and Lyra were hiding. When Ben knocked softly, Myra opened the door just a little. She looked tired and scared. Lyra was sitting on the bed, holding her toy star. Ben whispered that everything would be okay. He told Myra to pack her things and get ready, just in case they had to leave quickly. Myra nodded and began gathering their few belongings. Ben talked to Carla again. He asked if there was a safe place where Myra and Lyra could hide. Carla thought for a moment, then said there was an old storage room at the back of the outpost. Hardly anyone went there anymore. It was dark and dusty, but safe for now. Ben agreed it was a good idea. They waited until the halls were empty. Then Ben led Myra and Lyra down a back hallway. Carla followed, carrying a small bag of food and water. Lyra held Ben's hand tightly as they walked. They reached the storage room without anyone seeing them. Inside, it was cold and dark. Ben found some old blankets and made a small bed for her. Lyra. Myra sat beside her, holding her close. Ben promised to come back soon. He and Carla left quietly, closing the door behind them. Carla told Ben she would watch the main hallway for any sign of trouble. Ben nodded and decided to try and learn more about the strangers. He watched from a distance as the two men walked through the outpost. They talked with people, showing a picture on a small screen. Ben guessed it was a picture of Myra and Lyra. Most people shook their heads, saying they did not know anything. But one worker looked nervous. He pointed down the hallway that led to the rooms where Myra and Lyra used to stay. Ben's heart beat faster. He hurried back to Carla and told her what he saw. Carla agreed they had to be careful. She said she would warn Myra if there was any danger. Ben went back to his ship to think. He tried to come up with a plan. He knew they could not hide in the storage room forever. While he sat in the cockpit, Ben looked at the star maps. He remembered a small, quiet planet not far from the outpost. It was mostly empty, but there were a few kind people living there. He thought Myra and Lyra might be safe there. He sent a message to a friend on that planet, asking for help. The answer came quickly. Ben's friend said he would welcome Myra and Lyra. Now Ben just had to get them out of the outpost without being seen. He made a plan with Carla. They would wait until the strangers left the dining room for the night. Then Ben would lead Myra and Lyra to his ship through the back hallways. Carla would watch for trouble and send a signal if the strangers were coming. Night came and the outpost grew quiet. Carla sent Ben a message. The strangers had gone to their rooms. Ben hurried to the storage room. Myra and Lyra were awake, waiting for him. Lyra ran to Ben and hugged him. Ben told them it was time to go. They walked quickly and quietly down the empty hallways. Carla was waiting near the ship, watching for anyone who might come. She nodded to Ben and wished him luck. Ben thanked her for everything. Myra hugged Carla and whispered something in her own language. Carla smiled and squeezed Mira's hand. Ben led Mira and Lyra up the ramp and into the ship. He closed the doors and started the engines. The ship lifted off quietly, slipping away from the outpost. Without anyone noticing, Lyra watched the stars through the window, holding her toy star close. Ben set the course for the quiet planet. He checked the sensors and saw no sign of anyone following them. He smiled at Mira and Lyra, telling them they were safe now. Myra looked at Ben, tears in her eyes. She whispered thank you in English. Ben felt happy but also a little sad. He knew it was not easy to leave everything behind, but he promised to protect them. As the ship moved through space, Ben thought about the future. He hoped Mira and Lyra would find peace on the new planet. He hoped they would never have to run again. Myra sat beside Ben, watching him fly the ship. Lyra fell asleep, safe at last. Ben knew this was only the beginning, but he was ready for whatever would come next. The ship moved quietly through the dark space. Ben sat in the pilot's chair, watching the stars outside the window. Myra and Lyra were safe behind him, resting after their long and scary night. Lyra slept deeply, her toy star close to her cheek. Myra sat quietly, looking at Ben, her eyes tired but hopeful. After a few hours, Ben saw the small planet come into view on the screen. The planet looked green and blue, with white clouds floating over the surface. Ben smiled and told Mira they would land soon. Myra touched Lyra's hair and whispered softly to wake her. Lyra opened her eyes and looked outside, her face full of wonder. Ben guided the ship down through the clouds. The planet's sky was bright and peaceful. Trees and grass covered the ground below. There was a small village by a river, just as Ben remembered. His friend had already sent a message to the people there. They were ready to help. The ship landed softly near the edge of the village. People came out to see who had arrived. They were friendly and curious, waving at Ben and his guests. Ben opened the door and helped Mira and Lyra step outside. The fresh air was warm, and birds sang in the trees. Lyra took a deep breath and smiled for the first time in days. Ben's friend, a kind woman named Lucy, came to greet them. She smiled and hugged Ben. Then she knelt down to speak with Lyra, showing her a small flower. Lyra took the flower and smiled shyly. Myra thanked Lucy, using a few words she had learned from Ben. Lucy promised to help them and led them to a small house. By the river, the house was simple, but clean and safe. There were 2 beds, a table, and a window that looked out at the water. Myra touched the walls and smiled. She looked at Ben, her eyes shining with gratitude. Lyra ran to the window and watched some children playing outside. She wanted to join them, but was still a little shy. Lucy brought food and clean clothes for Myra and Lyra. She showed them how to use everything and stayed with them until they felt comfortable. Ben went outside to talk with Lucy. He told her everything that had happened. Lucy listened and nodded. She said Myra and Lyra could stay as long as they wanted. There was no need to be afraid here. Over the next days, Myra and Lyra started to relax. Myra learned new words from Lucy and from Ben. She helped in the garden and cooked meals in the kitchen. Lyra made friends with the other children in the village. She played games and learned to laugh again. Ben visited every day, bringing small gifts and telling stories about his travels. One evening, Ben and Myra sat by the river, watching the sunset. The sky was orange and gold, and the air was full of the sound of birds. Myra spoke slowly, using her new English words. She told Ben about her old home, about the day everything changed, and how scared she had been. She said she never thought she would find a safe place again, then listened quietly. He said everyone deserves a safe home. He told Myra that she was strong and brave. Myra smiled and touched Ben's hand. She said he was her hero. Ben felt shy but happy. The weeks passed quickly. Myra and Lyra became part of the village. The people accepted them and treated them as friends. Lyra started school and learned to read and write in English. Myra worked in the gardens and helped take care of the younger children. She was always busy, but she was never lonely anymore. One day, Ben told Mira he had to leave for a little while. He had work to do in space, but he promised to come back soon. Myra and Lyra were sad, but they understood. Ben hugged them both and told them they would always be safe in the village. When Ben returned, months later, he found Mira and Lyra waiting for him by the river. Lyra ran to him and hugged him tight. Myra smiled and welcomed them home. Ben felt happy to see them safe and happy. That night, the village had a small celebration. People cooked food, played music, and danced under the stars. Myra and Lyra laughed and danced with the others. Ben watched them, feeling proud. He knew he had done the right thing. As the stars filled the sky, Ben sat with Mira and Lyra by the fire. He looked at the people around him and felt a deep peace in his heart. Mira whispered thank you, and Lyra held his hand. Ben knew their journey had been hard, but now Myra and Lyra had found a new home. They were not alone anymore. They were safe, and they were loved. And as the night grew quiet, Ben looked up at the stars and smiled, ready for whatever new adventure might come next.